How Starbucks became a $100 billion success story. There's not a single person on this planet who hasn't heard of Starbucks, world's biggest coffee house company. But did you know that the former CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, was born and raised in poverty, barely making ends meet, and when things get tough, he even had to sell his blood a couple of times? This is an example of the overcoming adversity of Howard Schultz, who went from living in destitution and battling for cash to make due to changing Starbucks into a $100 billion organization. He was only a little youngster who never quit dreaming, and here is the reason you shouldn't stop as well. Schultz was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1953. The child of two high school dropouts, Schultz grew up in a public housing project. It was here that Schultz says he experienced one of the biggest defining moments of his life. At age 7, Schultz came home one day to find his father laying on the couch with a cast from his hip to his ankle after being injured on the job. His father was an army vet and a truck driver with no workman compensation, no severance, and no health insurance. Schultz told graduates at Arizona State University in 2017. "When I was 7 years old, I had a defining moment in my life," Schultz said. "I saw the fracture of the American dream and I saw my parents go through hopelessness and despair. And those scars, that shame, that is with me even today." Schultz's mother, however, encouraged him to pursue an education to open more doors for himself. He earned an athletic scholarship to attend Northern Michigan University, but upon arriving at the college, he decided he wasn't going to play sports at all. Schultz took on a wide range of odd jobs in school and following graduation. To pay for college, he worked as a bartender and even sold blood. After graduating, Schultz worked at a ski lodge in Michigan, in sales at Xerox, and at a houseware business called Hammerplast. Then he discovered Starbucks. Howard worked at a ski lodge and a salesman, but he had a desire to work at Starbucks. At the time, Starbucks had 3 owners and only sold coffee beans, so at the age of 29, after a full year of convincing the owners to hire him, he finally got a job at Starbucks while on a business trip to Italy. He walked into an Italian coffee shop and he was fascinated by his experience while drinking coffee. He was amazed by the fact that the owners of the coffee shops actually knew their customers and then even called them by their names while serving them coffee. Excited, he traveled back to the US trying to convince the Starbucks owners to accept these incredible new ideas, but the owners rejected him, so Howard quit Starbucks and went on to create his own coffee company. But he had no money to fund this company. In the course of the year spent trying to raise money, spoke to 242 people and 217 of them said no. Try to imagine how disheartening it can be to hear that many times why your idea is not worth investing in. It was a very humbling time, but eventually, enough people believed in his vision and decided to put resources into his business. He endeavored to open his cafe where he could recreate the experience he had in Italy. Lastly, carry out his thoughts. After a few years, Starbucks went bankrupt and Howard bought the company and became CEO of Starbucks. He rebranded his company with the Starbucks name and expanded across the United States. Today, Starbucks has more than 30,000 stores around the world and market value over $100 billion. And Howard has advice for you in life. You can blame a lot of people and you can wallow in self-pity, or you can pick yourself up and say, "Listen, I have to be responsible for myself." Believe life is a series of near misses. A lot of what we ascribe to luck is not luck at all. It's seizing the day and accepting responsibility for your future. It's seeing what other people don't see and pursuing that vision. Howard feels so strongly that the reason dreamed big dreams Howard dreamed the kind of dreams that other people said would not be possible. It's thanks to Howard Schultz that Americans today know what a latte is, and that they're willing to drop over $5 on a cup of coffee. The billionaire and driving force behind Starbucks for roughly 3 decades are back as interim CEO, a position he previously held for decades until stepping down in 2017. He will rejoin Starbucks board and help the chain recruit its next CEO. Coming from humble beginnings in Brooklyn, Schultz has always brought a sense of social justice to the way he runs Starbucks. In the later years of his tenure, that underlying quest for justice erupted with a new strength, inspiring both support and boycotts of Starbucks, especially as Schultz took a stand against some of President Trump's policies and considered a 2020 presidential run. Although the 1970s and a significant part of the 1980s, Starbucks was an espresso roaster first and a bistro second, yet in the mid-1980s, Schultz joined the organization and became persuaded that Starbucks could accomplish an unimaginable objective: stay premium while becoming omnipresent. Schultz had never believed that Starbucks should remain little like other local chains like Peet's. Schultz left the organization for a short period during the 80s since he couldn't persuade Starbucks pioneers that the organization could be a global chain in addition to an espresso roaster. In 1987, Schultz obtained Starbucks' image in 17 areas from its originators, who chose to zero in on their energy on Peet's. Then at that point, Schultz started sowing the seeds for one of the most aggressive retail extensions ever. At the point when the primary Starbucks opened in New York City, the New York City needed to characterize what a latte was, and make sense of it was articulated as La Day. Starbucks hyped its outlandish nature in all that it brought down to its sizes, with Grande and Venti giving an association with the Italian espresso culture that propelled Schultz. Clients accepted that their Grande lattes exhibited that they were superior to other people, cooler, more extravagant, more modern. Brian Simon wrote in his book about Starbucks, "Everything except the espresso." As long as they could get all of this at the cost of some espresso, even an expanded one, they enthusiastically gave over their cash, $3 and $4 at a clasp. Somewhere in the range of 1998 and 2008, Starbucks developed from 1,886 stores to 16,680. Schultz took the chain from only a plan to an altogether new sort of store that hadn't existed previously. Change that is greater than espresso. Howard Schultz, Starbucks. While Schultz drove the organization to mind-boggling development, particularly after returning as chief in 2008 after a period filling in as executive, his administration was likewise set apart by his proceeded with the obligation to social issues. In 2011, Schultz urged individuals not to give to political missions until the public authority tended to public obligation. In 2015, he led the Race Together mission to address police mercilessness and prejudice. In a 2015 New York Times commentary celebrating bipartisan initiative, Schultz said he wasn't campaigning for office, despite the support of others. Schultz's political endeavors have slopped up considerably more a year after the fact. In September 2016, Schultz embraced Hillary Clinton for president, his memorable time openly underwriting an up-and-comer. At the point when Schultz ventured down as Starbucks executive in 2018, it again stirred up gossipy tidbits about an official mission. He thought about a 2020 run as a free, censuring left-inclining groups of a progressive faction. I'm likewise worried that extreme left arrangement thoughts being progressed by a few majority-rule competitors will additionally estrange citizens who accept those thoughts will incur more monetary damage than great. Schultz eventually pulled out because of fears that a free mission would assist conservatives with reappointing Donald Trump. Insufficient individuals today will consider backing a free competitor since they dread doing so could prompt reappointing a particularly risky occupant president, Schultz wrote in a 2019 letter to allies. In the driver's seat once again, Howard Schultz. Presently, Howard Schultz is back in his old situation as Starbucks chief. However, it's impermanent this time. He will assume control when current President Kevin Johnson resigns in April and assist the Espresso Goliath with setting up its next chief. Starbucks is considerably more prevailing this present time than it was the last opportunity Schultz was in charge. Today, Starbucks has more than 34,300 stores in 80 nations. The chain announced a net income of $29.1 billion in 2021, and the organization's market cap is generally $95 billion. Schultz's total assets are about $4 billion. We can't offer you a specific secret equation for progress or the best plan for how to show up at the summit of achievement in the business. Anyway, my own experience suggests that starting without any preparation and accomplishing substantially more than what I ever fantasy about is very conceivable. Yet, if you hang tight for ideal circumstances, finish get nothing, the beneficial thing is you can pursue a choice and take control currently recollect something in 12 months you might wish you have begun today. So, what's your story?